Hello, my name is Jenna Kara. I am the co-chair of the CSPC 2018 editorial committee. Today I am joined by Krista Connell, who is the CEO of the Nova Scotia Health Research Foundation. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
So I wanted to ask you today, in your role as the CEO, what are some of the greatest challenges that you face with respect to science policy?
So I'm going to speak from two perspectives. The first is my own current day job as CEO and also as co-chair of the National Alliance of Provincial Health Research Organizations. So as CEO provincially, there isn't a specific science policy in our province. And so in order to get the directions, one has to consider the policies, directions of government generally. So if that's economic development, are there specific priorities within the health sphere, and so on. So sometimes it can be a little bit of a challenge to understand exactly what directions we should take and how we should engage people and what kind of programs to develop. So what we do is communicate. We communicate regularly and often with deputy ministers, with vice presidents of research at the universities, with other leaders in the community in the health system sector and so on, to understand the policy environment, if you will, and then try to translate that into how the Health Research Foundation needs to support and address the work towards those policies. So that would be locally. Nationally, through NAFRO, it gets a little more complex. To my knowledge, I don't believe there's any provincial jurisdiction that has really good, specific or explicit science policy directions. So it's disparate and all over the place. And so if you take what I described in my own milieu and multiply that by all of the jurisdictions in the country, you can see how complex it gets and how quickly we're mired in trying to figure out the common ground. So it's much more challenging nationally. But then there's another layer, which is the federal government. And I would say the federal government's made great strides in articulating policy direction for science, how it would like it to function, what it, where it would like it to put its resources, how to address issues. So it's multi-layered, and a provincial research agency has to understand all three. So I think it's fantastic at the federal level, the tri-councils, the federal government, and then as you get down, it gets a little murkier and a little more complex. And often government priorities change, and then figuring out if those changing priorities actually influence the science approach. Again, one has to keep on top of it, but it's quite doable.
So it's challenging, I guess, the communication at the national and the local level.
Yes.
So at NAFRO and through your organization, how do you further science policy, or how do you progress for science policy?
So I was on the keynote panel yesterday about the federal-provincial relationships, and one of the things I identified, and when I mean national, I mean interprovincial at the national level, so not federal. NAFRO identifies issues that we all have in common. And one I highlighted yesterday was the need to demonstrate research impact, the value of research. I mean, literally, if we can't demonstrate to our political masters and the taxpayers who ultimately fund our research agencies that we're doing something valuable and that is making a difference, then we really shouldn't exist. And that's a common issue across the country. So we developed an approach based on the Canadian Academy of Health Sciences work on research impact that's consistent across all the NAFRO members, and also how we've adapted that and modified it to address our needs. So there's a whole policy around not just how we measure the impact of research, but how we're communicating it that is consistent through NAFRO. And that has arisen from NAFRO, and others will be and have adopted it. We've presented, our members have presented across the country and around the world on this particular framework and how we've worked with it. So that's a good example of how we work collectively to address a policy relevant issue that we all have in common.
Okay, so you mentioned your panel about collaboration between federal and provincial perspectives to enhance the research ecosystem. Why do you think it's important to have that provincial perspective, and why do you think it's currently lacking, and how can we advance it?
So I was delighted to have been invited on that panel, but that in and of itself should tell you something. The provincial voice has been missing in the dialogue around federal-provincial relationships. It's historical that the tri-councils have go directly to the universities, who are important players and partners without a doubt, but they have their own specific perspectives and agendas, whereas the provincial agencies have the entire province perspective that they need to share. And there's balances, there's checks and balances and all those sorts of things from a provincial perspective as you go up the layers. We fund researchers, their careers begin with us. We develop capacity, we're supporting its students, we're engaged in science literacy at local and provincial levels, we're conducting peer review. Peer reviewers often will learn how the art of peer reviewing at the provincial level. So we're an incredibly important piece of the research ecosystem that's ignored. And so if you consider systems planning or complexity theory, if you ignore a really important cog in that wheel, things aren't going to function very well. And that's indeed what has happened in the past, where we have raised issues, concerns, and haven't been listened to. So establishing our credibility as experts in the actual management of science, the business of science, if you will, that's really what science policy is about, was incredibly important. And I think we're getting there, but as I pointed out a few times, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but humor is only funny when it's true, that I was the only provincial rep on that panel, and that was pretty appalling when you think about it, given the importance of what we do and how we're partners with everything. It starts with us. So how could we be left out? I think that's a really important message that I want to convey, and it's not just me knocking at the window saying, please let me in. It's, if you don't appreciate the important piece and roles we play in that system, things aren't going to work very well.
Yes, I definitely agree. So I'm going to give you this opportunity to give our viewers a way to find out some more information about you and your organization at your website.
So you can find out about me at www.nshrf.ca, but I would also recommend you Google NAPHRO, NAPHRO, and that will take you to the NAPHRO website, where you can learn about all of our partners, the members of NAPHRO, and what NAPHRO is working on.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.